Well, hello, welcome. This is Fine with Eric
And Sam.
here today to
uh,
talk about the insanity of the world. Every time I start to feel like, oh, maybe it won't get that bad, it gets worse.
it's definitely getting worse. I mean, there's a clear trend line with data points, and the trend is down.
It's like every day I'm like, oh, well, the market's green today. No, it's not. And then
Have you gotten sick of all the winning yet, Eric?
uh,
The
I
Trump
am
promise.
definitely very sick of winning. If this is what winning is, like I would like to go back to whatever losing was. Like I'm like looking at like like the like all my savings and like all right, well, college is optional. So unless you're straight
Yeah,
A's, kids, no school for you.
yeah. Let's talk about some of the stuff that's happening right now. You want to talk about colleges?
Yeah, we can talk about colleges. Like as a native Cantabrigian from Cambridge,
Uh-huh.
Mass, I was proud to see Harvard extend like double freedom rockets to the administration and say like, no, we're not going to let you choose what our student body looks like or what our professors are look like. I think that the administration wants to have this fight because I mean a lot of people don't like the elite institutions and like there's something that's far out, but I do think there's something to be said for them standing up and they're able to and helping sort of set a narrative that no, you can stand up and fight this, right? Like for the last couple months it's just been watching these like big law firms acquiesce, and then like as they acquiesced and thought that they had agreed to pro bono work that focuses on like not anything evil, like the administration is like, no, you're going to represent coal, and like no, like you're going to be helping us on like investigations into our illegal disappearing of people, and like it's a very Darth Vadery like pray I do not alter the deal further
Yeah, right.
approach, and like that's where we are, and so Harvard stepping up, I think they might want to have this fight, but I also think it gives a lot of backbone, maybe the right word, but to other institutions that are grappling with this in terms of what the administration is doing. And you saw it. MIT also said that they would not acquiesce shortly thereafter. Columbia, uh, who I was pissed about initially, said that they weren't going to go any further on their acquiescence, which is great, right? And like I was happy to see that bravery is contagious, and once one person steps up, a lot of other people will. And now the administration is doing the normal thing where they froze $2.2 billion worth of funding for Harvard, which goes towards things uh like researching like childhood disease and all these other things. So they're doing this like they're hurting Americans just so that they can make a political point,
Mhm.
right? And like it's and like they give no reasons or justifications. Like if you're gonna pull someone's funding, you're supposed to have a set of reasons for why you're doing it. They didn't do any of that.
Yeah, not
They're
bother.
going after the C3 tax status so that they would have to be taxed.
Yep.
Something that will probably be held up in court and there'll be an injunction on. But this is it's a mob boss mentality, and like this is what they're trying to do.
Right. Well, I think the important piece here, from my perspective, and maybe what's happening right now, is that I think a lot of people have, perhaps since the election, felt like this is just going to go on forever, if that makes sense, right? Like, there's just no escaping this. And if you're like running a large institution, you're just, you're never going to, you're never going to be able to run away from this because it'll just go on for too long. But I think what might be happening now is that people are starting to realize that um, whatever Trump does in the next couple of years, and however much he's able to destroy of the existing firmament, that he's not going to be a permanent fixture in American politics, because his political strength has sunk so quickly. I don't think we've ever seen anyone sink this fast in terms of their just basic raw political clout. I'm not saying that, like, I think that we're actually probably things have gotten so bad that I think we're probably due for like a second wind from him, where he's able to successfully make the case that he's not dead in the water. But you don't have this sharp of a fall, and then just for it to be like, oh, everything's fine later, right? Like, if you look at how presidencies play out, once the cracks start to show, people will find ways to exploit those cracks. And so if I were people at large institutions, I would be planning to try to find a way to bunker down and wait out Trump, as opposed to make deals that where there's like a new precedent set for anything. And I don't, it's up for them to decide that, right? Like, we don't know where the political winds are going to blow, right? But I think it's just important to see where the sentiment is moving in terms of sophisticated political observers, because people will make decisions about what's best for their future and the future of their institutions and their families, right? And so when you start to see people deciding that they're not afraid, that I think for a dictator is very, very, very bad. A
Yeah,
perspective.
no, and look, the dude's 78-year-old. Like, he snorts Big Macs on a daily basis. Like, like his arteries are like 98% like special sauce. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not sure like he's gonna be sticking around for the long run. I mean,
Why
that's
would why would
why.
you be afraid of this guy? And also the other thing is, even if he targets you in his crosshairs, you could just go to a meeting with him and flatter him a little bit, and he'll probably end up doing whatever it is that you want, because he's so easy to manipulate. So, like,
Yeah, I mean, but
just
yeah,
go
I mean, like, this is like the Bill Maher thing. Like, he went and had a meeting with Trump and was like, oh, he was very nice and cordial and whatnot. Like, this guy's a fucking real estate developer. Like, yeah, like, of course he is. Like, he's very good at He's very personable and like, in person and whatnot. And he's very good at that thing. Like, I wouldn't let that like fool you. It's at night when he's like hate tweeting in his Adderall haze that like, that you get worried. I mean, like, I don't know.
yeah.
Adderall comes down as a bitch, right? And makes you mean. And
Are there rumors that he's using drugs? Because I thought that he was a teetotaler.
no, I mean, he's a teacher. He doesn't drink, but like I mean, it's been around for a couple of years that he's been like that he like lines up Adderall like pretty hard
Really?
heavily.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and allegedly in the rumor mill. Yeah,
allegedly. But
yeah.
like, I mean, like the guy's like tweeting to like, have you ever met a freaking 78-year-old that's up at 2 a.m. like hate tweeting? Like, no. Like, my grandparents went to bed at like 4.
Right. That's a really I mean, I just thought that he's finding joy in the struggle of being in politics, but it makes sense. I mean, like, I think there is a pattern among this new brand of Republicans, in that they have major, like, personal issues that are just completely unresolved. They have no discipline in their lives, and it's interesting to sort of apply that rubric to Trump, and see, about his personal
I mean,
disorder.
like Musk is like fucking blowing lines of ketamine, like, and like playing with like 15 forks at like dinner with the president, and like,
Well,
I don't
let's
know.
talk about Musk. Did you see there's like an expose this week, where, like, apparently he's like cold DMing influencers on Twitter, asking if he can knock them up?
Yeah, no, I know, yeah, and like he wants to have IVF test tube babies with them, and it's like this one influencer, a crypto influencer, Tiffany Fong,
Uh-huh.
like noticed like like he followed her and then like started commenting on her videos, and she started making like a ton of money. She was making like $21,000 over like 2 weeks, right?
Uh-huh.
And so she, and so she was playing into it, right? And like, of course, like her viewership went up and she was making more
Yeah.
money. And once he sort of like had her over a barrel and like with her finances, like DM'd her and is like, do you want to have my sperm? And like the creepiest, like freaking like techno fascist way.
Yeah.
And like she didn't know what to do. And so she went to the other person, Ashley, I forget
St.
her
Clair.
name,
Ashley
St.
St. Clair.
Clair, and like they
Who's actually a political person. Like this, I think Tiffany Fong is not actually political. She's
no,
like,
she's a
yeah.
right winger, right? Like she moved to the right even harder once Musk started following her.
Right.
And it was like, Musk wants to give me his sperm. Is like, what do you think about that? And like they discussed it,
Yeah.
And it was like, it obviously hadn't worked out super well for Ashley,
No.
with her like begging Musk to pay child support on online. And then like as soon as she's decided, but she was worried about saying no because like then her followers would go away and all like the Musk bros or whatever would disappear. And like he's super childish. Like he quit a live stream last week because people were like in the chat being
Yeah.
like, "You have no friends and people hate you," and
Throwing
like
his
couldn't
controller
figure
at the
out.
wall. He's like that
Yeah,
guy, like rage quits.
he rage quit and like couldn't handle it, and it's like you can turn the chat off, right? And like
It's like the same shit that my friends and I did when we were 13.
I know exactly, but he is like his
Yeah.
worldview is a 14-year-old boy, and it's just like
Yeah.
I'm gonna create a legion of children, mostly boys, that will be my like cohort going forward. I'm not sure if you've ever actually met kids, but they generally start like rebelling pretty hard about anything that you represent around 12, 13. I'm getting it with my son too, like now,
Yeah,
and
of course.
it's like it's crazy. And like what kind of, he's like a shitty father, like he
Right,
has a
right. Yeah.
trans daughter
If
who
you actually build a relationship with them, maybe you get through that period of rebellion, right? But if you
maybe
don't build a relationship with them, you just never have one. Like, why would they ever want to be around him? Why would they not? Why would they ever want to be a part of anything he's doing
yeah,
if he doesn't have a
exactly. I
relationship?
mean, like, but he wants to like have him on his like little libertarian utopian compound, like that he's gonna build in Texas or Greenland. And like I'm not sure. I mean, like I would love to go to Greenland to ski, but like at the
Wasn't
same time, living there doesn't seem super awesome.
wasn't
Um,
he talking about in the same expose I read that he was talking about like having these babies before the next apocalypse?
yeah, and that's where they are. They think the world's gonna end. I mean, like like
What the hell is wrong with this guy?
I mean, like
I think that he probably gets off on the idea that the world is going to end. Like, I think that
that
he
he's gonna
likes.
cause it, and he's gonna be like the Marvel. It's like Thanos, and
Yeah.
like
What
he
what
thinks
what
he's Thanos.
happens? What happens that like I mean I understand if people are telling like a lot of men I think and I felt this before too like just feel like the bad guy because enough people have told us that we're the bad guy that we feel like bad guys sometimes, right? Like that
Yeah,
when enough people say it, like when people treat us like we're potentially a bad guy, then we end up feeling like a bad guy. But like, how do you embrace that role so hard that you literally are trying to cause an apocalypse so that you can end up looking right for an apocalypse happening?
I mean the guy's a nutcase. Like you hear
Right.
stories from the White House about how like he says like completely crazy things and like looks at
Yeah.
people like he expects them to laugh because he's surrounded by lackeys, right?
Yeah.
And like I don't know, it's just like a sad person who has made billions of dollars, and because of that, is thinks that everyone should look up to him. And
As
like
of right now, right? I mean, like all of his businesses are so risky. They're like big bets that are highly speculative. So if at any point the speculative part of this economy goes away, all of his businesses are going to be worth dog shit. So like he'll go from like maybe he's like sold enough stock at this point and taken enough actual cash payouts from these companies that he'll still be exceptionally
I wouldn't
wealthy. Or
doubt
things
it,
that he
right?
had. Right. Because he knows that his companies are dog shit. It's all a scam.
He's all in
Every
Dogecoin.
single thing everything he does is based on high speculation, which is usually scam behavior. So what like I really I know that we're in a crazy period where like it just reminds me that of historical periods when like colorful characters like Robespierre and Napoleon, grabbed power for short lengths of time. It's like, duh, like psychopaths are going to end up in positions of power during these types of situations. But long term, like Caesar didn't last. It's a miracle that we still know Caesar's name today, Julius Caesar, because he had very little actual legacy that he left behind. His biggest legacy was grabbing power and then being killed.
Like, yeah, Vini Vidi Vici, right? Like I
Right,
came, I saw a camp. I mean, he was more known as a military general, and then like he
right.
was he was emperor for a little bit, and then got
And he died.
stabbed by everyone, and then like
Yeah. Then
in
he
the
died.
Senate, and then we got like this great like Shakespeare play that
Right, right. Well, and his nephew Octavian, right? Wasn't his
yeah, he
nephew
was the real mastermind.
was the guy who actually set up institutions that lasted for like 500 years for Rome. But
Yeah,
Julius Caesar not so much, right? So So maybe it'll be Baron Trump who ends up doing anything
Oh
relevant.
God, don't. Love of God.
It certainly won't be Eric or Don Jr. Let's put it that way. Those guys are
Oh, I mean, they're chodes.
a couple of screws rattling around in an empty container in their head.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah. I mean, they're just. I mean, they're like performative masculinity and like
Right.
what and
At
like.
least Baron Trump. At least Baron Trump knew enough to like make an introduction to Aiden Ross. That's some measure of intelligence, right?
Yeah, no, I think that that's some measure of intelligence, and like
Yeah.
he understood like the streaming space because like he's in it and like
Yeah.
the online media space, and this is something that they got to they got to first, and they figured out in a much more comprehensive way, and like we completely ignored because you can't pay advertising consultants to do it, and like
Welcome to the Democratic Party.
and it's like how do we make sure that we pay like the people we know, right? And but I mean it's true. Like I was talking to a friend this morning who was telling me about like the guy who this Estonian guy, and he was elected president. It was like the pro-Russia party, and like people
In
pretty
Estonia?
much in Estonia, like soon after the like not like it like in the early aughts or early aughts I think, and he Estonians pretty quickly figured out that the guy was an idiot and like didn't know what he was doing. And so he left the pro-Russia party, he marketed himself to like the center right party as bringing these new voters in, and never was really able to get purchased inside of it. But what he did is he ran for a seat in the European Parliament, and he did it by just starting posting shit on TikTok that had nothing to do with politics, like videos of him like carrying a log through an airport, like just like doing random shit, and like everyone is like, haha, this is funny. And then all the young people who like, weren't familiar with like the Russia time period and like how awful of a president or prime minister or whatever the fuck he was in Estonia, thought it was great and voted for him, right? And and I think it's just another example of how we think through things in terms of like if we just give them the right policy prescription and tell them like how this is all going to work, like they'll vote for us. And people aren't rational, and like they're not like they want to look at a guy carrying a log through an airport and giggle, and then they'll vote for him in to be like European in the European Parliament. And it's not like the European Parliament does anything really, but like so it's like an inconsequential post, but or semi inconsequential. But like it's like I think that like a lot of times in politics we think of things of like we need to convince the populace of something, and like we forget that only 15% of the populace actually cares about that, and the rest just want to feel good about themselves.
Yeah, that's why performative virtue signaling even exists in the first place, right? As the Republicans like to skewer us for virtue signaling, and I think they're probably right about our virtue signaling most of the time.
Yeah, no, I mean they are. I mean, like it's so much easier to go on MSNBC and like name check all the different like organizations of things. It's much harder to actually do something with it, right? And like I think that's the part of the problem with like like with how we fought for like LGBTQ rights and all these other things. Like it doesn't help if you're just saying the things, right? Like we need to engage and have these like and actually not cede the ground on them. And that's why I've gotten this like annoyed with people that are like, no, we got to throw like whatever trans kids under the bus or immigrants under the bus, and like it's like no, we have to actually have the argument and like with our perception, because we avoid them and then we lose them.
I think it's all about actually forming relationships with communities that have where where people are actually living their daily lives, right? Like and on literally every issue, right? So you can see how like if like we talked about a lot about this, just relocalizing politics in a way that it's not localized right now will make a huge
It's really hard. There is no local press, right? And there's no way to have like a shared community story, or it's very, very hard. And the answer to that isn't necessarily like, well, we're just going to knock on their doors 800 times and tell them to vote. It's building relationships and having trust and doing these things, because there is the epidemic of loneliness, and the way around that is to build actual relationships and trust, and like actually show that we care about people, not just tell them we care about them and then not show up as, you know, like the income tax on the top like earners in the country continuously falls since 1980. You know, it's like people don't believe the bullshit, and rightfully so. I mean, like things have got income disparity has gotten worse, and like you know, there's like the right wing people are now. It's crazy to watch them become like you know 1970s populists, but they're sharing like the graph of globalization and like how like Americans in the middle class have gotten the least benefit from it, right? Whereas the wealthiest Americans have like seen their stock portfolios and everyone invested in the market
Yep.
skyrocket, right?
Yep.
And you know, and like their answer to that is like, well, it's going to tear the whole fucking system down, but that just hurts everyone. And like the answer to that is like, well, how do we actually address income inequality in a way that shares the benefits to the middle and lower classes, working class? And like that's sort of one of the key aspects that we need to you know address and actually do something about it. And like that's where we we need to tax them. Like you know that's why the Republicans are making noise right now that they're going to raise taxes on the millionaires. They'll never freaking do it. If you think Chip
Yeah,
Roy,
right. It's literally
they're
they'd be
saying
raising
it.
taxes
Like
on
that's their
themselves.
virtue signaling, right? Like we're like, oh, we're gonna
Yeah.
raise, we're gonna do this, and I'm like bull fucking shit, you're gonna do that.
They're virtue
But like,
signaling on free speech, and they're virtue signaling on siding with working people. And if like they've never really done this before, so I think this is the first time they've always just been like F you, right? F you
yeah,
working people, right? And so now that they're actually trying to do this, I think that we have an opportunity to just like destroy them reputationally in a way that they haven't really made themselves
yeah, we gotta treat them
open to.
irreverently. I mean, like the fact that like Bill Ackman is like, you know, was like literally crying on Twitter about the tariffs when they first came out, and about
Yeah.
how like it was like nuclear winter for the economy. And then like 2 days later, when he rolled them back, is like, this is the art of the deal. Like, oh my god, Trump, you're so smart. And like, I'm like what kind of man are you? Like that's just like so back and forth. Like you're just a fucking joker. Like
A
what
lot
a
of these guys are. A
fucking
lot of these guys
fool.
who are like even the most famous investors, they're just like they're little fishies. Like this is why it's like it just feels like no matter how big you get, you still feel small. The system is set up to make everyone feel small. I guarantee you the reason why Trump is acting like he does every day is because even though he's the fucking president, he still feels small and weak and powerless inside to do
Disrespected.
anything.
Nobody,
Yeah.
yeah, you know, like, oh my God, people don't like, you know, like they don't respect me. I get no respect and like whatnot.
Right.
And it's like, dude, I mean, it all comes from like
Reorient. Yeah. Go ahead.
I mean, it comes from him being like a what a Queens developer or whatever,
Yeah.
and like never able to get into Manhattan, and all
Who
the
cares?
Manhattan developers were like looked down upon Fred Trump and his family.
Yeah. Who
And
cares, dude?
so he has like this like lifelong ingrained sense of inferiority. And I think that's like well, that's sort of what happened to a lot of men too. Is like you know when you put like they feel inferior, they feel unable to do things.
Yeah.
And so like they will like there was a like, really good TikTok thing the other day about this woman talking about how she dated like right wing men
Oh
for
yeah.
a year, and how they would sometimes they have this liberal talk, but then they go into these online groups and talk about how like you know how do we make women more subservient and like
Like
all this
how to
how to
manipulate
manipulate
women
people and how to do all
into forcing into being in situations where they're being coerced into doing whatever the man wants. Like
yeah, exactly. And like, but like the reality is like these like they're just super lonely people who feel like other people are getting things that they're not. And
other people are getting things they're not. And the secret to getting things that you don't want is not to try to coerce or manipulate people. It's to be super open, and things will just arrive, right? Like
yeah,
what
I
the
saw this blue
actions that
sky.
they take are
I saw this
leading them
blue
to
sky
be
thing
lonely.
the other day that
Yeah.
was like this guy who like shit posts all day on the Twitter, and it was pissed off that he saw like a Latino driving a $70,000 car,
Uh-huh.
right?
Sure.
And it's like he's like, well, why does he get the 70,000 car? And I was like, I don't know. He fucking worked.
Yeah.
Like, he has a job. He doesn't sit in the basement and like, rah! And like you too can get that. Like it's not
Had
that.
a positive attitude, like you know, felt like had a goal, had a dream, and went for it. And not that you like like again, I think the Republicans in the '80s had it backward. Like they had this whole like personal responsibility thing where they were like, it's basically like ex post facto, like you're poor and therefore you never deserved wealth
Yeah,
or prosperity, right? And what actually the truth of the world is that you do have responsibility for yourself, and also it is within all of our power. We all have the ability to accomplish what it is that we want to accomplish, and the barriers that stand in our way are like nothing
yeah.
once we actually start to develop our own inner strength.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that's mostly true. I mean, I do think that there are a lot of institutional barriers to like actually moving above class and whatnot, like the
That's true.
monopolization of everything. Like
That's
it's like
true, but I think that once you start to live in an abundance mindset, you start to not desire, like you don't, all the things that you thought that you desired start to fall away, and the people who are actually at the top echelon of this system of actually having the most are actually probably among the most unhappy, because it doesn't actually make you happy to have all of that. It What makes you happy is having enough and having positive relationships in your life.
yeah,
And if you do that, then you will live in abundance, and you don't need to be rich in order to feel abundant.
yeah, and it's just like so easy to like fall into that too. Like like
Yeah,
driving around and be like that person has a nicer car than me, and like they have and like I mean I have fallen into it too, and like been
sure.
like everyone's doing better than me, and like why can't I succeed? And I'm an awful
Yeah,
person, and like and like but like also I have like sweet family and my wife is pretty awesome.
yeah.
She is like patient and like loves me, which is like shocking, and like like
And you have
whatnot.
good
And
friends, and you have good friends. You're surrounded by people who you can trust to talk about your problems, and you have fulfilling professional goals that we're pursuing, and it's like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, I guess that doesn't mean I don't get freaking depressed every once in a while. Like
No, no,
if I
especially with
spend too
what's
much
going on
time
right
on
now.
Blue Sky or like Twitter at night, and like I'm reading through things, I'm like, oh my god, we're fucked. But like I try
We
to stay
are.
away.
We are fucked, but also like the extent to which we're fucked is also dependent on how tightly we identify with feeling trapped by the type of institutions that Trump is trying to leverage against us, right? Like, uh, these institutions don't have any actual power unless we pretend that they do, because they've been pretend from the beginning.
What are
So
laws but a bunch of words on paper,
yeah,
right? And
and, and
that's the thing that he's taken to heart,
right,
unfortunately for all of us. But the
unfortunately for all of us, but like the more that he reveals the true nature of that it's all been pretend from the beginning, and like erases the legitimacy of the system and makes it about naked power, the more that we're all going to have to confront the truth that we are actually free, and none of it's it's all been pretend and us giving away our power to begin with. So uh we are fucked, and also the path is open for all of us to live a better life than anything we've lived up to this point, and I
yeah,
really
yeah.
believe
I
that.
mean, like, and I also think that we can beat this guy. I mean, like, the
Yes.
reason he's doing all this stuff is like he like is because he's weak and he doesn't have the power to
No,
actually do this. Like, according to our constitution, at least. I mean, I don't think it's going to be painful, but like there's cracks showing, right?
they've
And
been there
like
since the beginning.
and like the guy's a toddler, just like Musk.
Yeah,
And I mean, like he started. It's so like he rolled back to 10% and all this trade war stuff, and
yeah.
like literally just handed our ass to China, right? Like he was like, "We're gonna go 475% tariffs now," and like China's like, "We're gonna do 125% because that like there's no one will buy your stuff at that level, and it's ridiculous to do anything more." But like China also owns all of our debt, right? And like he showed that he'll respond to the bond market, like
Yeah.
like the yields going up with the rest of the world because that was causing the fold. And then he's like, okay, China, holder of all of our treasury bonds, like like we're at war with you, and here we go, and
But
you
meanwhile,
hold all the leverage.
right. China's the biggest holder of our bonds, but not they don't have a majority of them. They have the most of any country, right? But
Yeah,
which means that we would be able to potentially escape their any issues they cause for us by trying to leverage that. except that he's alienated literally every other country.
Yeah,
So,
and I don't
so
think people
why
are.
would they bail us out?
Yeah, I mean, people aren't psyched about, and like but people aren't super psyched. Like China's not in the greatest position either,
No,
right? Like
they're in
they
a
have like
terrible position.
inflationary pressures on their economy, and then like Europe is worried that they're going to flood their markets with a bunch of cheap goods in order to make up for it. So like, there still are some leverage points, but China holds the trump card still, and like they own so much of our debt, and if they really wanted to flatten our economy right now, they could. And
Yeah, and
and
Trump has acknowledged publicly that he's a sensitive little boy when it comes to, when they take out the bond market ruler and slap him on the butt, he's going to go ow,
yeah,
and
and run
and
away.
exactly.
And like, I don't know. I mean, it's just like it's like playing. It's like bluffing with an open hand playing poker.
He's got like a pair of twos, and he's like, and he's like playing, he's like holding his cards backwards with a pair of twos, being like, I'm a great poker player.
Like, I am all in. He's like Ralph Wiggums, like in Simpsons.
Yeah.
And it's like I'm all in, and it's like the guy's like sitting there with a straight flush, like sweet.
And meanwhile, Bill Ackman's in the corner, like,
Like brilliant,
yeah,
brilliant,
brilliant,
brilliant.
brilliant.
But like it's like all these people that have like done nothing but make money, and so like because
And they
they're
don't
like
have any experience except for making money. They know literally nothing except for how to be in a room and like figure out how to like manipulate other people to get what they want, but they don't have any other skills. And I think that's really important to understand. And as Elon Musk got put in this category too, he's like started a bunch of high tech companies, but is he actually even an engineer? I think he's just like,
no, he's not. He's someone. I mean, he bought Tesla
right.
and like he bought SpaceX and he bought Neuralink and he bought all these things.
He's just a
He
money
was
guy.
develop. I mean, maybe he was a developer for PayPal, but I don't think
Yeah,
that.
I think he was like he was like a low level engineer that did not continue. The success of PayPal allowed him to abandon his technical background and just become a money guy. So all these guys
Yeah,
are just money guys, and those
exactly. They
people
make
don't bring
bets and
any
they have
skills
high
to the table.
risk appetites, and they think that because like it's like thinking like this because like you won at roulette a bunch that like you're like a hot shot, right? And like yeah, I mean, like you've made some good bets, and that's good.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you understand the interconnectivity of the world economy. It
No.
doesn't mean that you understand, like why feeding starving children in Africa is good for us. Uh,
Well, the thing that the conclude like we've all lived in this world as long as we've been alive, where we've been pumped with propaganda saying that the private sector is more efficient than the government. And the thing that I've been arriving at as I've seen how private sector companies operate, publicly traded, the companies with the highest level of scrutiny and accountability for bad decisions. I've been watching them over the past few years, and I can say without a doubt the government runs way more efficiently than any of these companies, and have more accountability and are better spenders of money than any of these companies. Like you could call out any kind of waste and fraud or whatever from the government. I'm sure that it exists, but it is nothing in terms of percentage volume compared to what's happening at these companies. They're doing. They're 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 running bad all their businesses poorly, and the executive teams don't even care. All they're doing is just putting money into stock buybacks, which were illegal until we deregulated them. They were illegal because it's fake. All of it is fake, and it's been fake for a couple decades now. And the people,
yeah,
ironically, the
so
people.
let's like, will you explain stock buybacks and what they
Yeah,
are
yeah, thank you.
quickly?
Okay, so stock buybacks are when you take your company's treasury. This is literally just like money that's in the bank account for your company, and then you give it to a person whose job it is to buy stocks, and you tell them buy our company's stock, and that then creates buy pressure, which raises the price of the stock directly. So through that, what you've basically done is you've taken your operating capital, the stuff you're supposed to be using to, like, I don't know, run your
Pay
business,
people. Educate,
literally do anything that's supposed to actually make real
invest.
money. Yeah, right. Literally anything that's supposed to actually create a fundamental value proposition for your company by running a business. And instead of putting it into that, you're putting it into raising the stock price artificially so that you, as the executive, can sell your own stock, which is given to you by the company as an award for your work, into a higher priced market without crashing the market yourself, and then flee your own company because you know eventually it's all fake and it's all going to collapse. So that's
Yeah.
what they've all been doing for the last couple decades. We're looking a
And
couple
that's what the tax
decades.
cut's going to do. So the tax cut is like completely engineered to allow people to do the business tax cut, right? So like
Yes.
even if they raise, even if they like say by some miracle Republicans decide to tax the rich, right? Um, they they're also going to lower the top business tax, right, which is going to give them extra cash, which they're then going to put back into the market, and then they're going to sell their own stock, and it's so at the end of the day they end up winning, right? Like no matter what they win. Meanwhile, everyday Americans are losing. They're paying on any good, paying 10% higher minimum tariff.
Yep.
All these people that have like started companies like drop shipping with buying stuff from China and then selling it here, etc. That have like built these like hustle economy companies are getting screwed, and like they're not going to be able to do that. And like the whole thing about America of being like innovative and like figuring out ways to make
Oh, yeah.
cash out the window, right? And like the at the same time we're doing that, we're decimating the universities because of this like anti wokeism or anti like and the guise of anti-Semitism. Um, and like that's what really drives long-term wealth, right? Like
Right.
if you really wanted to make our country the most innovative in the world, you fund the research that then people build long-term businesses off of, and that's what gives us the lead everywhere, right? And like that's what makes our products, like, that's how we actually like address trade problems, and that like we sell the vaccines, we sell like whatever it is, MIT Media Lab, which like develops all the robotics and everything, all of the things that like actually allow people to build businesses are generally funded by government research grants. And
Yeah.
so giving that away while at the same time taking away the entrepreneurship capability of the country is insane. And like it is like doesn't make any sense. And then folding like, oh, we're gonna have to like let Apple have like this, like have an exception or whatnot. Like I ran out because like they were having a sale on MacBooks, and I have like a 15-year-old one to Micro Center, which is like Disneyland for me.
Yeah.
And like I was talking to the guy, and he's just like, yeah, but the materials are all going to cost more. So even if he gives them, even
Right.
if he,
And American companies, let's say you can give the stuff in America because of the tariffs, the American companies will just be able to raise their prices to like 2 cents lower than whatever the tariff cost would be for the other products. So like the consumer will never, it's just going to lead to more prices even for American products, higher prices for American products too, because
yeah,
they
I
can
can't know.
get away
Every
with
company, they're
it.
gonna raise the price. Like like they're not gonna take it as like the big W. Everyone else is now like 10% more, so more people will buy our thing. They're gonna raise the prices, right? Because that's gonna generate more profit. And like so
So
everyone's
they
gonna
can
go,
buy more of their stock. So they can
and they can
buy
buy
more of
more
their
of their
stock
stock,
so that the
and it makes
executives
themselves
can
more
sell
money.
their stock into a high market and take home more money and screw over the eventual investor in their own company. And
Yeah,
that is
exactly,
and
exactly.
that's why I don't respect and that's why like any of this stuff about like it's just so clear that the government is the most efficient and effective place to put any resources compared to private sector companies because at least in the last 30 years, I mean, it could be that we at one point had capitalism, but we certainly haven't for a long time. And so all the maxims and like rhetoric around capitalism in this country and like saying that we have it is just fake. And
Yeah,
so I could I just don't think I think the people who say that they're capitalists aren't actually capitalists. It's not that I'm critiquing the idea of capitalism or saying we shouldn't have it. I'm saying that everyone who says that they believe in it is a faker, and we can't actually trust what the words coming out of their mouths because they know all of this. They know everything that you and I are talking about right now, and they still act like they believe in capitalism. And really, they've been faking the whole system for decades. And so
yeah.
that's what we need to confront these people with. I would love to
Yeah,
hear
and
more
that's why
out of
China
these
is like
guys.
eating our own lunch, right?
Yeah,
Like, like they can actually be a little bit, they actually are more capitalist. Like Tom Friedman
yeah,
did like an Ezra Klein podcast the other day where he was talking about his experience in China and like why they kill us. And like it's because like whenever there's a new industry or opportunity, they let like 10,000 people try to start their own businesses, right? Like
right.
solar panels, for instance, right? They had in every city had a solar panel company that was starting up. And
Okay.
then like 5 of those win, and that like become the market leaders, right? And but also all the other companies that started up become the supply center. So they built a complete supply chain instantly. In America, you have to have like all the knowledge and all the capital up front for people to invest in you.
Right.
So it's a slower process, and it's not about like it's just like survival of the fittest. Everyone go start, and the government will help you. It's a much more measured thing here. So people aren't, we don't build like big companies like that from scratch as quickly. And so like if we want to be competitive again, like that's what we should be pushing more of the research and where our competitive advantages are, not like let's go back to 1950 Argentina and like tariff everything and rebuild manufacturing here in order to bring jobs back that are all going to be AI run anyways.
Yeah, there's no
Um,
jobs. No
and
jobs.
like there was a study that came out the other like in PC Gamer that I saw that was like if you produce the iPhone here, it would cost $3,500 a unit wholesale to create, right?
That's about right.
Um, like all these things would just cost like so much money, and nobody's gonna like buy a $3,500 phone, right?
No.
Like it's like
Maybe that
let's
would
go
be good
back
for.
to
I mean, like maybe we should stop consuming so much. Maybe we just need to like let everything.
well, that's the other argument, right? Like
Right.
that they're saying, like you don't really need the flat screen TV in your house, so we can
No.
just go back to like mining. Like everyone should be a miner. Like the Department of Labor has like been is like advertising like discover mining, and like it's an honorable profession and
Right.
everything, but it's like dangerous as hell. At the same time that they're like literally cutting all the safety boards for mining. Like like all right, people, back to the mines. Like what are we, fucking District 12 in the Hunger Games? Like
Yeah.
we're all miners, and this is what it is. Like
I think that there are two ways out of this of the crisis that we're in, and what I've seen is that the 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 like center left path is to view people as valuable
mhm.
and 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 to embrace what it means to have people be valuable with all the positives and negatives that come with that, like the cost of human life, the value of human life, the amount of money that we invest in someone's education and training and nurture, right? All of that is sort of like center left owned at this point.
Yeah.
uh and because the right has completely abandoned it, and then the right wing path is to tell people you're worthless, and what we actually need to do is make sure that the value of an investment in your that we're making in your life is actually less, because we need to be willing to let more people die on the assembly line. We need to let people be maimed. We need to let people have really poor quality of life when they're retiring, because if we
But
do
it's more
that,
manly to die on the assembly line, didn't you
right,
know?
that's
Right?
right.
Like it's like you're
And
bro.
if we do that, we can return back to a golden age that we had before for a period of like, I don't know, 100 years, 150 years, when we were like
It
the
exists
cutting
during
edge.
World War II, right? And it
Well,
quickly
it
like
started in around like the early 1800s, and then it peaked around World War II, and that's when things started. Then
yeah, then we
after.
started selling. I'd rather sell financial services than like like widgets.
Well, and I don't. I mean, like we don't know what the industries of the future are going to be, but I think it's just important to note that any of the like if you could see this sort of like all this happening during COVID, where like the Republicans who were protesting COVID restrictions, they were basically saying, I want to work. We need to be able to work. We need to be able to work. We need to be able to I'm willing to risk death from this disease, from catching this disease in order to work, because I know that I'm just a cog in the machine and I'm embracing my role as a cog in the machine. And if I end up in the hospital dying, that's good for America. And they're saying that. Like they're saying that with their full chest. They're saying that I'm willing to die for a rich man's dream, and I'm willing to sort of let myself be the one that the rich guy steps on his way. Like I'm willing to form my body with a bunch of other poor people into stairs up to this giant platform of stage that people like Elon Musk and Donald Trump can stand on, and they can stomp all over me with spiky boots to get there, because the project that we're undertaking is to elevate certain men to positions of power so that they can make decisions for the rest of us, and everyone else is irrelevant
And they're all
and
fucking
not valuable.
crooks too. I mean,
Well,
like Ron DeSantis, the future DeSantis in like Florida, right? This
yeah,
is a guy who I mean, they basically took a bunch of like Medicaid money and then like took it through the state, and then they funneled it to a nonprofit that his wife ran, and then gave her like of the 10 million, they took 5 million in profit. Like
And
they're
this is the
fucking
guy.
crooks.
This is the guy who all the Republicans were saying he's the more serious version of Donald Trump.
Yeah,
Who's less of a- Yeah,
intellectual Trumpism is just like more high-minded theft, right? Like the
right.
stealing.
These people are just selling off our country for parts and pocketing the cash.
Exactly. It's like a short-term play. Those fucking shows. I mean, like,
Which is why after, even if they're able to carry out all their plans after all this is over, the the lower the value of human life in this country path is a non-starter,
yeah,
because at the like it may functionally end up that way, but the ideologically it can never win over time, because we've left that behind, because it was never true to begin with, right? It was
no,
never okay. It
it's
was
never worked.
never
Like, look
okay.
at Chile in 1973. I mean, like, it's a longer road there, but like in all these places, and like Argentina, and like it always fails,
And
because
it's
people.
never been okay. It's never been okay for the aristocracy, landed aristocracy in Europe, to have serfs. It's never been okay for the party leaders, the party poobahs in the CCP in China, the Communist Party in China, to tell their like peasants how to live. None of this has ever been okay. And the more that we acknowledge that, the more that we emerge in freedom, the less that these people are going to have a leg to stand on, because the whole thing is predicated on that there's some kind of reasonable reason why you can force people into doing things, conscript them into armies, do
Well, it's
like.
very communist. I mean, like this is the
Bullshit.
Cultural Revolution, the Great Leap Forward, where like they went after universities and like said like these are not real jobs. You need to work in the fields, right?
Yep.
And like the intellectualism and whatnot, and like murdered millions of their own people. There's actually a great movie, a great a Netflix show and book about this, the three body problem, which goes into this.
Yeah.
Um, and the university scientist eventually calls aliens to come destroy us all, as as the yeah, it's not giving away too much of the plot that happens in episode 3, but the
Spoilers.
no spoiler, I mean,
Okay.
whatever, but like this is like it's insane and like hugely detrimental. It took China 30 years to recover from the Cultural Revolution, and like Deng Xiaoping and like
Yeah.
whatnot, like doing the reform, and like
Mhm.
it just neuters the country, and like I don't really want my kids to have to be like in their 40s when America finally recovers.
No, and like you should note that the period in which Europe, such as it was, became, or like Christendom, if you really want to get into like how a lot of these right wingers think right now, when they became ascendant, it was when they began to liberalize and start to give away freedom to ever wider circle.
Yeah,
Freedom and accountability over the powers that be, to a wider and wider circle, and to start to hold institutions like the Catholic Church accountable
yeah.
for abuses
But they want to go back to pre-enlightenment, according to your
right, right, right,
argument,
right,
right?
right. But the period in which they exult, the period in which the right wing, the new right wing, wants to like, they want feudalism again. That's the period in which our enemies, the enemies, and when I say our, I don't actually mean that. I mean the enemies of Christendom in Europe were dominating them.
Yeah.
Like Islam was on the rise and crushing them.
Oh yeah,
And
Constantinople, and
China was the most powerful country in the world and had been for hundreds of years, right? And that only ended when the West decided to liberalize. And so,
yeah,
again, freedom and acknowledgement that coercion is fake and always has been fake and is wrong, morally wrong, and will lead to you being a weaker society, is is like, it's like so apparent that it's like anybody who spends 5 minutes closing their eyes and breathing and just listening to their heart will be able to tell with immediately that it's bullshit. But somehow people trick themselves into thinking that they have to be afraid of some kind of irrational, nameless loss of control. So they embrace the idea that they themselves need to be told what to do instead of just thinking for their fucking selves. And like, I'm done with it. I know you're done with it too, but I think the country's going to be done with it, and so that's how we're going to end up winning against these guys, is because their whole ideology is predicated on lies that go back thousands of years that were never true to begin with.
It's
And
always been the fight. Like
yeah,
I think it has always been the fight versus like it's just not new. Like it's the slavers in like 1850s, right? That wanted to control the means of production, right? Like and convinced like the white people that like black people were the enemy, and not that like there's a market economy that you guys could be participating in and maybe not living in huts in like the fucking Appalachians, but like generate hatred in order to keep people captivated. And it's like the same exact fight, and like it's
always the
always
same
like
fight.
the civil rights movement, like versus like like the hatred and anger of white people, right? And it's like it's nothing's ever changed. This is always the fight. We sort of told ourselves that we had won it, but we
Yeah.
hadn't. Like we now
Barack
have a
Obama
bunch of
got
like South
elected.
Africa apartheid assholes that are like it's the same fucking people.
Yeah, it's the same ideas and the same people. It's all linked. Like Barack Obama won, and we all decided that we'd beaten racism, right? Or
Yeah.
like, and I think it's important. Like anybody who's watching this who does not consider themselves of the left, like I know we're drawing a lot of lines here between like different things all over the world and through history, right? But the through line here is about coercion, right? So if you believe that it's all about freedom and uh and helping people realize better dreams for them for their own lives, then then there is no other group of people that you should be on the side of other than like the center left, such as it is, because we're the only like the reason why the center left political axis claims all of these past historical movements and links them together is because it's all about helping people be more free. And so I mean, you can critique what we've done up to this point all you want, and I'd love to do that myself. But like, it's just a dead end to go with the right because the dead end there is that they want you subservient under their thumb, and they will never let that go because at its base, that's the only thing that's motivating them to get involved in politics in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Screw those guys.
Yeah, screw them, and screw us until we start to listen to people more, and actually elevate them and their dreams as opposed to try to tell them what we think their dreams should be. That's where as soon as we solve that problem in our political coalition, it's this is done.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, there's I mean, I mean, like, the Democrats have a ton of faults too, and like, and
Yeah,
it's like it's not like they're squeaky, right? Like as we talked
no,
to before, like there's a lot of like virtue signaling and saying we're gonna do things and
yeah,
then not actually
yeah,
doing it and like
so
whatnot.
bad.
And I know, like, but like I do think that I mean I do think that like we're at a real moment of reform. I mean, I'm personally like starting to fall in love with the idea of parliamentary governments, because like there's no way for us to get rid of Trump right now beyond like win the next election really big because none of the institutions are holding,
Yeah,
and
we've got to
I'm just
wait around like this, like
yeah, to wait
twiddling
around
our
like this,
thumbs.
like in Britain, they had Liz Truss, and like like they got rid of her in 44 days.
Right,
Uh,
because it was so apparent how bad. Like you could just say, okay, I'm calling for a new election.
yeah, and then like,
what an
and also
amazing
it
idea.
doesn't cost $8 billion, and like it makes a little bit more sense. It's more representative, and if the government isn't doing what the people want, you toss them out.
Right, right, and that applies to the Democrats just as much as it applies to the Republicans. Right.
Yeah, yeah, I think. I mean, I do think so. And like, there's all this consternation around like David Hogg and like him trying to do these primaries
Hmm.
and whatnot. I mean, like I feel of two ways about it. I don't want to go into it, but
Yeah. Well, the one thing I do want to go into is the stuff that Trump has been doing. You try to jawbone Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve. Like he's talking about firing him and stuff
yeah, you'll
because
see the markets drop like 10 trillion points.
well
Like
well
it'll go to zero
I mean I think what he wants. Let's talk about what he actually wants. What Trump
with lower
wants.
interest rates.
He wants lower interest rates now when we're not in a recession to make the economy feel like it's growing now. But if he gets his way, what we end up with is low interest rates before a recession actually hits. And then when the recession hits, we've got no tools to deal with that recession. And so he could be screwing himself. So like it's amazing how Donald Trump is, he's like so self-defeating. His like I maybe he's doing it on like maybe he's just self-sabotaging. Like, does he actually want to
I
win?
don't think he knows. I don't think Navarro is an economic advisor. The guy's a moron. Like Besson
Yeah.
today was like, "Oh, don't talk about Powell. Like that would be dangerous." But the
Yeah,
people
that's
are
it. He's
like
real. He's
Lutnick
real.
is like a fucking fool, all right? Like he's just like on
Yeah.
there, like he's the millions of iPhone screws guy, and
Uh-huh.
like yeah, no, and guess what? Interest rates are going to be decided by the bond market. So if they make stupid
Exactly.
decisions and cut interest rates, guess who will start selling bonds? Everyone.
Exactly. Like the thing that I think people miss here is that just like the rest of the government, it's always been sort of like a trust game. It's always been sort of like an illusion. And so, like, what people don't understand about the Federal Reserve is that usually what they end up doing is like they act like they're controlling the market, but what they're actually doing is just adjusting government policy to where the bond market already is so that they can act like they cost it. Uh,
Yeah.
but they're not. They're just responding to market pressures just like everyone else. And then and if the rest of the market, like you saw what happened in 2022, interest rates started to rise, and then the Federal Reserve was like, "Oh, we're going to start raising rates," because what they actually want is to see very little daylight between what the actual rates are and what they're pegging as the government rate. But it's all sort of like, again, fake, because it's actually the bond market that's deciding the rates, and they're just sort of like, oh, they're like running to where, like if someone throws a frisbee and you run to where you think the frisbee will be. That's what the Federal Reserve is doing. They're not the ones throwing the frisbee; they're the ones trying to catch it.
In some cases they are, right? In recessionary times and whatnot, right? Like they cutting the interest rates does help, right? It does like move the market, but
They can put their finger on. They can put leverage in the market. They can't control it, right?
no, they can't control it. They got it's not like they actually control it, and I think that's like the big disconnect for a lot of people is that the Fed cuts rates and mortgage rates go down. It's like yes, in a functioning economy, that's like like what should happen. But if everybody's full of fear and doesn't, I mean, it's also highly inflationary. But like
That too.
well,
That
we
too.
forget that. Like, but I don't know. I mean, like what do I know? I'm just like some dude who watches endless YouTube videos about economics.
Yeah, right. But I think that it's telling that people like you and I, Eric, can learn enough now to become sophisticated enough that we actually can comment on this somewhat intelligently. Not that we're experts, right? But I don't feel like I've said anything stupid on this podcast. I don't think that we're experts, but like
I'm
we're
sure I
able.
have, but
Oh, you know what I mean, though, right? Like we can have a conversation about this that's semi-educated. This is not, and anyone else can too, right? Like anyone else out there can educate themselves. No one is the owner of all the wisdom. Certain people have specialized in this to the point that they are going to have probably the best take or a much more sophisticated take than other folks, including us. But like the democratization of information is massive, and so we should not be trusting experts just because. We should be trying to educate ourselves and become our own experts so that we can make the best decisions for ourselves in a system where people like Trump are trying to manipulate that system to enrich themselves.
I mean, I think that's true to a certain extent. I mean, like I'll just not like my wife who like does vaccine safety research like has a
Uh-huh.
friend from high school who is a hairdresser and like in her hometown and like didn't want to get her daughter the HPV vaccine
Yeah.
and so she cuts my wife's hair and my wife my mother-in-law said to her, is like, well, you should talk to Carolyn. She did the big study on like HPV vaccine and knows all the data. And like she said back to her, like, well, I know more about this than Carolyn. And it's like, like so I think that
That's a
there's
good
also
chance.
like there's a pitfall there too.
Yeah, there's a there's a hole that people are falling into because the institutions that have all been built to be sort of like paternalistic and like to like hand down things from on high, which is breaking down. And then the ones who fill the void are people who know nothing or are lying on purpose.
Yeah.
Uh, but but
Yeah, that's
that
that's
that
true.
and so I'm definitely not advocating that we end up in a situation where everybody just is like, I don't know anything, but I'm just going to act like I do. What I'm saying is
Because
that
RFK told me that all vaccines cause autism, which is like debunked 70 years ago.
yeah,
And I know more than like, the experts that studied this their whole life. I mean, I do think that there is, I mean, it's like the whole opportunity cost thing of an economy. Like, what are you delegating? But I do think that like on certain things, I mean, I do think that people want to like feel like they're smarter than the experts. So like
they certainly do.
they sometimes, uh, like glom onto conspiracy theories or whatnot in order to make themselves feel more powerful.
Mhm.
And I like how we've done a lot of this has been not that great.
Right. Well, we're definitely in a time of flux and change, and we'll see how it all plays out. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about before we break for the day, Eric? I feel like there might
No,
be
I mean,
something.
I think we covered a lot of ground. I mean, like we didn't get to Abrego Garcia and like the disappearing people to foreign, El Salvador, where El Salvador is apparently the most powerful country in the world to us right now, which is insane and like is hatching a real constitutional crisis where they're gonna go after the like where they're just telling the courts like no way. Um, but I think that that's scary, and them misrepresenting what the Supreme Court has said is a real concern that we need to look out for because it's not. And they're talking about like sending violent criminal citizens. I mean, it's just the classic authoritarian playbook of like first go for the least
Mhm.
and then notch it up a lot, right?
Right.
And that's where
This is playing on their turn. They know that they can pick this fight if they want to overturn the Constitution. This is the fight that they can pick because it's the best possible ground for them to fight this battle on. Right, when what's at stake is bringing someone with a violent criminal history into this country, and that like I think that that's why.
But this guy
Uh,
doesn't have a violent criminal history. I mean, like his story,
okay.
like I want to make that no, does not. Absolutely not. The like that's a lie that the
Oh
administration has
my
that
god,
we completely
that's
bought.
crazy! I didn't know that. I didn't
So
know that.
like no, he was a kid in El Salvador whose mother owned a pupuseria,
Uh-huh.
and the guy at the Calle Ocho or at Dieciocho, one of the gangs there, I can't remember exact name, was like started hitting them up for like pay us or else like we're gonna take down your pupuseria. And then there's like give like your son needs to join the gang, and she sent him to America at 18. Then they went after Gilmar, the second guy, who was 16 at the time, and said same thing. He needs to join the gang. And then
Got
he
it.
was sent to America in order to escape it.
Escape.
And then basically so he came here illegally, right? But that doesn't mean you don't get due process.
Yeah,
And then
because
in
he's seeking asylum.
2019, he was like he met this woman and was taking care of their autistic child and another kid, and went to Home Depot to find construction work and got picked up for loitering. And then
It,
a cop, yes, this is so then a corrupt cop that was actually suspended just said that he had like a connection to MS-13, and that was in the report, and that's the connection that they use. But the judge in the case said that like that's not true, and you cannot send them to El Salvador because his life would be at risk. So that's the court order that they're breaking, like the original court order that they've broken. So there's no evidence whatsoever that this person has ever had any affiliation with a guy with MS-13 or anything. He's like that kid that would have gotten killed or whatnot in El Salvador if he hadn't come to the U.S.
yeah.
So I think the situation is that, and so he wasn't supposed to be deported, and they deported him by accident He's since had another kid, and his other son is also on the spectrum. And I think is also has hearing difficulties. So he has three kids that he's taking care of. And now he's just been shunted off to El Salvador, where the court had said that he's not allowed to be deported to because it was a risk to his life. But Bondi and all these people are going out there saying these things, and according to well-reported sources, none of it are true.
Wow. See, I had no idea about that. That's crazy. I
Yeah, so that's why that's why they're going out and saying all these things, like he's MS-13, he's all these other things, but none of it, they're not providing any evidence whatsoever. And the thing that they tried to produce the other day was from a cop that was fired for being corrupt.
Wow.
So it's like some guy said something, right? And then he had like gang signs by having like a Chicago Bulls like sweatshirt on, or whatnot. And like that's the evidence that they have that he was part of MS-13. Like pretty sure that any kid growing up in like early aughts, whatever, like the Bulls, right? Like
Yeah, that's nuts. I just, oh my god. Again, everything is just falling apart based on the, like, I think this sort of ties into our last conversation,
it's all
based on
lies.
the ability to lie and get away with lying.
Yeah.
And and
And like
and
no one's challenging it, right? And like
yeah,
so it's like, oh yeah, well he was. I mean, like he was like like if you're like undocumented illegal immigrant, right? And like fleeing gang activity, like leaving his like only other child, leaving his mother in El Salvador to like walk to the United States so that he wouldn't get like pulled into a gang.
he didn't want to be in a gang. He actually was seeking to avoid being in a gang. Gang. Yeah.
Seeking to avoid it, and has been like a productive member of our society, right? And like but the whole fact is, I mean, like every time I'm on Facebook and I see someone say something about it, there's like 100 like Elon Muskites that are like, you support violent criminals in the United States, and it's like, no, even if he was a gang member, the problem is that he deserves a day of court in court to ascertain whether he was. Like you can deport illegal immigrants, right? Like that's totally fine. This guy was a legal permanent resident with a standing court order, and no matter what, how do we know they are who they say they are? When they grab a citizen, when they do something like that, if you don't have a court order, like just a hearing, it doesn't have to be much. Like, but the whole basis of this country was that due process was necessary,
Right.
and
So the
that you
rule of
couldn't just
law.
the rule of law and all that. So like, yeah, I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with like deporting people who have broken our immigration laws. Like definitely don't have a problem with deporting illegal immigrants. No, I mean not illegal immigrants. Sorry, I don't deporting violent criminals. Um, I like, but I do. No matter who they are, they deserve a day of court and a hearing to ascertain that those allegations are true.
Yeah. Well, you certainly made a powerful case to me, and I would agree with it, right? But I feel like what's happening right now is that, I mean, this is El Salvador, right? So they have a really long history of not having a rule of law. So I think to them, it feels probably, and to someone like Bukele, right? It feels like natural. He's like, oh, like the U.S. is finally conforming to the way that life actually works, right? Where like the rule of law
Yeah.
is a joke, which is the
Yeah,
way
but
he's been in history.
I mean, like people love him in El Salvador because like it was violent as hell. Like see also the story of Garcia. Like like you couldn't own a pupusaria without like your kids being like forced into a gang and like paying protection racket money. And he stopped that. And like that's like the appeal of strongman authoritarianism. He calls himself the world's coolest dictator. And like cleaned up the country, right? And like so like to like he's a hero to a lot of those people because they couldn't like go outside without getting shaken down by a gang. um but at the
Yeah,
same time,
but if
you
you're
know
replacing a gang with another gang, I mean, like if you're a dictator, you're just another gang. It's just a big
you're
gang.
just another gang, right? And but like they're like people want
That's
to
what
be able
dictators
to
are.
eat.
They're gang members.
Yeah,
Just like you were saying before, like Donald Trump acts like a gang member
the
because
mob house.
that's what this is. That's what this is. They're it's like, like when you stop giving yourself, appealing to any kind of rule of law and letting yourself be governed by law, or or any kind of like legitimacy that comes from public support, and just start saying, "Well, I'm in charge. Too bad. That's it." Then you are a gang member. That's what you are. So, um, and there's
Yeah.
no way around it. Like you're going to start acting like a gang member. That's what this is. When people are picking up, when law enforcement is picking up people off the street in plain clothes, that's a gang.
Yeah, well, plain clothes and like breaking windows of people that
Yeah,
have done nothing wrong, right? Like it's like that are here legally and whatnot. Like
yeah,
that's bad. That's bad. They're just trying to get everyone out, and it's going to it's people
uh,
can cheer it all they want because like they want to get rid of like the set of people, but at the end of the day, this is going to hurt us really badly.
because the government's going to end up being run by gangs from here on out.
Yeah,
Definitely.
well, yeah, that and like also like as soon as I mean, like look at what happened in Florida when they started like being really hard on immigration, right? Like they rolled it back because no one was there to pick the oranges.
Right. Once people start actually feeling the effects of it, it's like, oh no, 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 no. But then they'll make sure that they get all the press headlines from the taking the action initially. But then they'll make sure, oh, we don't need to cover
Right,
how this
they'll
is
just reverse it like on the slide, right? Like
right. Exactly. We don't need to cover how this is actually back to things exactly the same way things were during the Biden administration. All right.
no, like right,
Let's end it there. This
all
has
right.
been a fire fest, man. Very exciting. It's good. Been good talking with you.
Good talking with you.
All right. Bye bye.
Thank you.